Welcome back, everybody. We are here for round 5 of Bremen Regionals 2022. And what a regionals it has been so far, Ben. I think we've really been in for a treat, and we've got yet another grateful match coming up.
A treatful match indeed. Yes, it's going to be excellent. We get to feature some more great players. And of course, at this late stage in the tournament, where these players are already 4 wins and 0, we're really separating out the players now that are having their really strong tournament runs. Not just the best players, but the ones that are performing the best in this tournament itself. And on your screen right there, we have Alex Gómez going to be representing Spain, and so many achievements there. We know Alex all too well from previous streams, previous tournaments, the 2015 Lille Regional Championship, 2016 UK National Championship, in a format that had restricted Pokemon, the same as this one. 2017, the European International Championship finalist, and of course, 2019, another format that favored restricted Pokemon, getting top 8 in the World Championships.
Yeah, definitely no stranger to accomplishments, Alex. Even back when he was he's been playing consistently ever since his senior division years, going up and progressing and just being so consistent throughout his master careers. And talk about his opponent right now, Mr. Richard Hodge, UK representative, great guy, great achievements as well. Sheffield Regionals top 16 in 2019, Malmo Regionals top 16 in 2018, whilst within that same year as well got top 8 on the Tours special event.
And you can see him there. It's always nice to see on stream a fellow bouncer.
Yes.
Yeah, you see him excited to play Alex, and excited to play in this tournament. Really nice to see.
Yeah.
I, as a fellow bouncer myself, have to hold it in these events where we're casting. But guys, whoever it is that you're supporting, whether that be Richard or Alex, show your support now. We have the poll on the stream right here. You can post in chat as to who you think will win or who you want to support in this round 5 match of the Bremen Regional Championships.
Yeah, indeed, because I think I'm really looking forward to this match, to be honest. I know Alex, he's just so consistent. He's a great player, one of the top European players, no doubt about that. And I think Richard, on the other hand, is honestly really strong UK representative player. I'm quite excited to actually see Richard. I could even remember to back the Ultra Series format where he used to quite robustly run Mega Lopunny alongside Necrozma, Duskmane, and then he had the Ultra Necrozma as well. So he always does try to go ahead and explore and find out what the strong calls are for the meta. He does his research, he does his homework quite well, and he does definitely bring his niche picks. So I'm curious to see what niche pick he's going to be bringing for us today.
Indeed, as we are getting these players connected, they're about to start this battle. And, if there was a player that you wanted to pick as the favorite caster, who would it be?
Oh, wow. What a question. I'd say, I don't know. It depends. I think because at the moment, I think with regards to the teams that we're looking at, team structures and matchups between both players, it's quite interesting because we see that Alex is bringing a very similar team to his compadre, or should I say just best mate, Eric Rios, which we have seen in previous stream matches. And whilst over on Rich's side, we've got Kyoga Zashin, the doubly named Swordfish, with a couple of interesting partners there. We've got a bit of hyper offense sort of a formula going on, whilst also including that Ferrothorn, which is quite interesting because it's got that grass and steel typing that we've previously seen Thomas as well as Elio bring earlier with the Kartana, but it's just got so much more bulk. It's there for a particular matchup, and I think a matchup, let's say, for example, such as Calyrex Ice Rider, for example, it does really well into, it could go ahead and has utility with Iron Defense set up, with the leftovers, the Leech Seed, if Richard's opted for that set. Or on the other hand, you can even pair an Assault Vest on it, take advantage of that additional special defensive bulk, and just go ahead and utilize maybe a Dark type move that you could add to it. accompany the body press. I think Ferrothorn is a really good Pokemon, as long as it is given good enough space to be able to maneuver around, and sort of similar to like a Shedinja, where you want to make sure that you have a Pokemon that can be checkmated.
Yeah, exactly. And, speaking of whether or not this game is going to go like those Shedinja teams, with Ferrothorn being used as that win condition, we are going to be going into Game 1. Kyogre and Regieleki coming out onto the field. Very aggressive turn 1 here from Richard Hodge. And the Grimmsnarl Kyogre may be aggressive, but equally could be quite a defensive start off to this game by Alex Gómez. So, Costa, what do you think is going on here?
Well, I think we've actually seen this lead come out from Eric as well a couple of rounds before. So I think the Grimmsnarl Kyogre lead has a really good position to actually set up and go on the offensive, because Eric's Grimmsnarl at least was Iron Ball. And unfortunately, at the moment, we are just being told that we are unfortunately experiencing technical difficulties. We will be trying to go ahead and get the stream up. So we're just going to talk a bit in the sort of like empty air moment situations, unless it's actually, yeah, it's returned, lovely. So we're just going to go straight into the action. Then we're going straight for the juicy.
I'm excited to be back. Regieleki is clearly excited to be back as well. He's bouncing about around the field, going for his Dynamax form. And we are going to get a Dynamax form in kind from Alex.
Yes.
It's going to be that Kyogre wanting to get some offensive pressure onto the field, especially in the rain. Both players have the rain, and so the rain in this matchup is absolutely uncontested. And this Kyogre, well, in fact, Kyogre on both sides of the field are going to be doing maximum damage.
But there it is. We saw it before. We see it again. The trick Iron Ball play goes straight onto the Regieleki, actually revealing that it did indeed have an Assault Vest, which will not be protecting it from this KO. That is so detrimental to Richard's strategy right now going into this Game 1. You've immediately lost your Dynamax capability, and that is not what you want to be seeing, especially when the fact that this Water Spout doesn't even deal that much damage onto Alex's Kyogre. It doesn't even pick up the KO on Grimmsnarl.
No, not without Assault Vest that it's now holding from the Regieleki,
Exactly.
Boosting its special defense and allowing it to take that Water Spout. Now Richard brings in the Zacian, and quite an interesting place, right? Because the Grimmsnarl, now having tricked the Assault Vest, can't go for any of its shenanigans. It can only go for the offensive move of choice that it has access to, whether that be Foul Play, whether that be Spirit Break. And it almost doesn't matter now. The Grimmsnarl's kind of done its job. Regieleki's gone from the field, and now Zacian is the only thing on Richard's side of the field, aside from that Ferrothorn, that will be able to deal with that Kyogre.
I think so, and in this scenario, this isn't really what you want if you're Richard, because Alex does have that offensive pressure still on the field. We know that even if a Behemoth Blade does go into the Kyogre onto Alex's side, it's not going to be picking up any sort of KO. Grimmsnarl still has some rain to essentially try to get a Spirit Break off onto the Kyogre if it does survive, which it definitely does not, as Water Spout is just going to be coming out, knocking it out, but naturally, we're going to be seeing Alex have a free slot of a free Pokemon he's going to be able to bring in post this Max Lightning that actually goes into the Kyogre.
It does indeed. And is that a 2 HP survival there coming out from this Kyogre? Absolutely trained to survive there. Kyogre does not go back to Richard, and that's going to be quite good because Richard gets the opportunity to pivot his Pokemon around. If that Kyogre on Richard's side of the field is maybe holding a Choice Scarf, which is maybe possible. It could be that Richard can bring it out, bring it back in later, and do some really good stuff. But in the meantime, Alex, Kyogre on just below half HP, definitely prone to being knocked out by the Zacian on Richard's side of the field, but also bringing that Incineroar in.
Yeah, and I think being able to bring in the Incineroar right now, you get the Intimidate off, you drop the Zacian from +1 to neutral of its attack. So this subsequently means that the Zacian feels threatened. It needs to try to switch out, hence why Richard is going to be bringing in the Incineroar of his own. So he wants to be able to, at least if it can survive this turn, have Fake Out for the following one and bring in Zacian at a better spot.
And no Choice Scarf on Kyogre on Richard's side of the field, just to protect coming into Kyogre from Richard, so implying that maybe Richard's trained his Kyogre to be that little bit faster than Alex has trained his. but a big Max Geyser coming into that Incineroar, knocking it out on the switch in. And, you know, I kind of feel like that's okay for Richard. He's in a position where he just needs that Zacian on as much health as possible, because once it comes back in, we've got the rain up, so Flare Blitz isn't going to be doing too much damage. Incineroar from Alex is on the field. So Zacian's kind of in a position where it wants to be, and especially now that we know that there's no Choice Scarf on that Kyogre, it looks like Richard may have manufactured himself a good position to do some damage to Alex's team.
Yeah, exactly. I think if Richard does have Origin Pulse as a move of choice, it'll be great to use here. But Alex is going to have to force a situation where he has to play a bit more defensively. Maybe see if he could pivot out the Incineroar in this case, and actually hard switches to the Zacian. So this Zacian is going to be subject to a potential Origin Pulse, which I think Alex is confident may just go ahead and survive it, because the Zacian on Richard's side always goes into that Protect on the Kyogre.
It does, and the Protect on Kyogre, I think very sensible there from Alex, just making a position where he can just do a little bit of pivoting, change his board position. Zacian surviving the Origin Pulse coming out from Richard's own Kyogre quite handily, in fact.
Yeah.
And so leaving himself in a position where maybe you can knock out the Kyogre on the opposite side of the field with your EVA player, depending on how these Zacians are trained. Depending on how these Kyogres are trained as well, maybe you knock out the other thing as well. It's really all up in the air, isn't it?
I think Alex must be confident, or at least he's hoping that his Zacian is going to be faster, but we're not going to find out this turn. It just goes for the Protect, whilst Richard's Kyogre actually opts for a Protect as well. So this may be a scenario where we're just going to be seeing... No, actually the Sacred Sword goes into Alex's Zacian, ignores the Kyogre, which allows it to go ahead and use the Water Spout right now. I don't think it's at max HP, so it's not going to be able to completely utilize it, but it does at least guarantee a 2-hit Kyogre.
Yeah, and you know, it's looking like maybe that's a Mystic Water that the Alex's Kyogre may be holding. Richard correctly going for the Protect on Kyogre. I like the Water Spout here coming out from Alex because it's accurate, right? Origin Pulse has a chance of missing, and so, you know, you get these chances of not actually hitting your mark. But speaking of hitting the mark, Zacian is knocking out Zacian on Richard's side to Alex's side, respectively.
Yeah, and I think this may just be enough to go ahead and lock up the game, because this is single target Origin Pulse. Oh! But no, I take that back. But then again...
Oh my god, what's going to happen? One?
Oh my lord! The battle of the weekend Water Spouts, ladies, and it's amazing.
Oh my god. And the Life Orb chip from the Life Orb recoil is enough to pick up the knockout. Oh my god. I've never seen that happen before. Richards EV'd his Kyogre very, very well here, because that's just landed on 2 HP. 2 HP is exactly what Richard needed in that end game to position himself such that there's an Incineroar versus the Kyogre. Unfortunately, though, there is still Origin Pulse to contend with, and we've seen some Intimidates come down on the Zacian on Richard's side of the field, so there's still some chances.
There are still some chances, but you do have to consider the fact that since at least we know that Richard's Kyogre is not locked into Choice Scarf, it can go for the Protect, which means that it could safely go for it in this turn, kind of stall out and hope that a single target Origin Pulse outside of the rain is going to be enough to do the job. And yeah, we're just logically going to be seeing this player. Zacian first goes for the Protect and soon followed by that Kyogre.
It does indeed. Very safe Protect there from Richard. Absolutely right play here. Alex, just going for the Flare Blitz. Doesn't really make too much of a difference. Yeah, if you were going for the Fake Out there, you'd kind of been playing for Richard to not hit the Protect button. But there we go. Sacred Sword going into that Incineroar. Really quite a lot of damage going off on there, but the Origin Pulse does indeed connect, and Richard Hodge will be taking the first game of this best of 3.
I know, and what a kind of roller coaster of emotions there. I think just being able to just see the varying sort of results of training, especially in Richard's Kyogre, that to be able to survive that is like quite impressive and immaculate, because you just actually see why it's so important to be able to get the right calcs and get the right sort of investment to be able to survive those sort of scenarios.
Yeah, exactly. It's just so exciting having this like, oh, does it get the KO? No, it doesn't get the knockout. Oh my god, it's what a spell! Like if that was Origin Pulse, it would have and it connected, it would have knocked it out. So you know that choice that Alex made to hit the water spout button on, maybe not thinking that Kyogre was going to survive in that turn, really did cost the match, because you know that Incineroar would have been able to knock out the Zacian, certainly from the range that it was at. And so yeah, just wow, what an exciting! I don't know how we could top that.
I don't
know how we could top that.
By having another game.
Having another game. Having another game. Yeah, I'm looking forward to it. So these players will be connecting again. We'll be going into game 2. Costa, what sort of adjustments do you want to see coming out from these players?
I think from Alex's side, we saw the sort of situation where you thought that, okay, he's got a lot of momentum. He went for the trick into the Thunderous. Sorry, apologies, not into the Thunderous, the Regieleki. Was able to get rid of the Salt Fest and actually picked up a one-hit KO, but I'm not sure if that particularly... I guess it did help because it was able to survive from that water spout because of it, but I think Alex may have wanted a free switch in there in that scenario, because the Grimmsnarl was essentially useless after the fact that it can no longer use any of its status type moves with its prank ability, and he was kind of lacking the momentum there. So what I would like to see is maybe better utilization or understanding now that he knows that the Assault Vest is on the Regieleki. How can he better maneuver his situation around it? Can he sort of focus on another Maxmon from his side of the field? Because Kyogre is great, but you just got to be a bit cautious about the situation, because he had a lot of momentum going into the early game, and then he started petering off, I think, with the fact that he wasn't able to properly answer Richard's, spread damage that was able to come out immediately after.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a gambit, right? You've got to decide on what Pokemon is important to knock out, because when you think about it the other way, that Regieleki, if it was left to its own devices, max Airstreams potentially, certainly max Lightnings, whether that's on the physical or special side, either way, it's going to do quite a lot of damage, and certainly Kyogre doesn't want to be taking that. Neither does Zacian on Alex's side of the field, and so it's like, okay, how do you, if you're Alex, knock out the Regieleki on Richard's side of the field really effectively, but not losing momentum all at the same time?
I think maybe even a G-Max Rillaboom might be an answer here. I think as long as you're able to sort of rule out and control the Incineroar if Richard does opt to bring it, I think having a reliance more on Rillaboom with the grass terrain as well might be a good play here, because you're able to threaten the Kyogre, you're able to resist the Regieleki's electric-type moves, and also keep terrain or even try to force a play. And you also do additionally have the Fake Out as well, so you've got to take all of these stuff into consideration. I think Rillaboom could be an answer, maybe not in the lead, maybe in the back to come in for mid-game.
Maybe so, and we'll see what these players adapt with. No adaptation coming out from Richard Hodge, is just going to be the Kyogre and the Regieleki coming out in the field. And of course, as we see in previous tournaments, Alex is a player that knows his matchups, he knows the flowcharts that he needs to use to win his matches. It's one of the reasons that he's so consistent as a player, and of course, one of the reasons that he has led indeed exactly the same in that Grimmsnarl Kyogre.
Well, I think so, and I think this may be a scenario where both players want to go with a comfort lead, and they have to just try to find a route to what can better their situation and essentially gain more momentum, because Richard, even though he lost the Dynamax turn 1 of Game 1, he was still able to capitalize off of it momentum-wise with the Pokemon he was able to bring in. He brought in Zacian, for example. So I think in this scenario, if he predicts a trick coming out from the Grimmsnarl, he can choose not to Dynamax and maybe just play it out and see what the scenario is, or even actually switch it out for Ferrothorn.
Oh, here it is. I was wondering if that Ferrothorn was going to be coming to the match, and here it is. Going to be, if the trick does come out, it's not going to be using the light clay to great effect, I don't think. But we know that it's not Assault Vest, so it'd be interesting to see what item that's carrying. That will mean that if a Water Spout comes out from Richard's Kyogre, it's probably going to be enough to knock out this this Grimmsnarl on turn 1, which is going for the Reflect instead. So a little bit of physical bulk coming out on Alex's side of the field, and it is that Water Spout does pick up the one-hit knockout on the Grimmsnarl, so no light screen, I think, importantly, coming out in this turn. And it's the Max Lightning adaptation coming out onto this Kyogre is enough to pick up the knockout. Instead, no 2 HP survival this time, and that is a big KO for Alex there. But it does allow the Regieleki to come back in, and it does mean that Regieleki does have electric terrain.
Yeah, and we know all too well how dangerous Regieleki is, especially if you go ahead and you have the multiple modifiers added. You've got the Transistor from its ability, you've got the electric terrain, and that just further propels the amount of ridiculous damage output this Pokemon is capable of, especially with an Assault Vest to go ahead and further add its to its special defensive bulk, which is quite minimal, but when you do have an Assault Vest on the field, it is quite nice. But in this scenario, like you said, Ben, I think being able to position yourself to the point where you can you can go ahead and Dynamax the Regieleki. You didn't risk it that turn 1, sorry. You're able to not mind so much the Ferrothorn going for the switch, because you just know Ferrothorn's just there to do Ferrothorn things. You just want to go for maybe Leech Seeds, Body Press, Eye Defense setup. That's completely fine. Richard doesn't mind, and that's why he's kind of wagered. He could have even wagered the fact that he thought he may have survived based on that game 1, right? But with the 2 hit-point survival. And it just goes to show that the indication that it could have been a damage roll.
Could have been, certainly, but something that won't be so much of a damage roll, I don't think, will be this Regieleki coming out onto the field. It's still excited to be here. You know, I'm really happy to see that. As excited as us to be casting over this game, and Regieleki going to be going for a big attack. Whether or not it's going to be targeting the Incineroar or the Kyogre, well, it is the Incineroar. Max Guard coming out from the Kyogre, so well predicted there from Richard to get that damage off onto the Incineroar. I think that's going to pay dividends later in the match as the Parting Shot comes out, does drop the attack and special attack, my apologies, of that Regieleki on Richard's side of the field and allow that Zacian to come in uncontested completely. We'll have to see what this Ferrothorn does, though, because it could be going for a Leech Seed. Oh, into that slot. Nice. It's going to be racking up that residual damage and making sure that Ferrothorn on Richard's side of the field stays nice and healthy.
And I do really like Richard's play there. Oh, actually, apologies. I do want to point out, everybody, that the Regieleki, you would have expected the Max Lightning to be able to deal devastating damage. So the fact that it didn't must have been indication that that Regieleki is physical based. So it kind of makes sense because it's Assault Vest, right? So you do always like having bounce, quite literally the move, as an availability for a max air scream utility there. So being able to A, have Alex's Reflect set up, and B, be intimidated by that Incineroar, it basically neutered the amount of damage output it was capable of doing, because if that was a special-oriented Regieleki, I don't think that Incineroar was going to survive.
It would definitely have been close and definitely would have done a lot more damage than it did. A great observation to point out there as the Intimidate comes back in. Certainly an observation that Alex seems to have made as well. Most likely that this Kyogre is going to be able to take a Max Lightning from Richard's Regieleki, as Ferrothorn just going for the Protect, guarding itself against a potential Sacred Sword coming out there. As we see the Max Lightning boosted by Terrain, still doing, it's doing damage. It's doing okay damage. I think the important thing to note here is that next turn the Kyogre's not going to be in its max form, and it'll be doing even more proportion of damage. Max Geyser, though, going into that Regieleki isn't enough to pick up the KO, but does leave it on very low health, and certainly in a position where Incineroar at some point will be able to pick up the knockout.
Yeah, and I don't think it's quite within range of a fake-out priority sort of knockout there. So, given the fact that the Kyogre has now lost its Dynamax, I think it is prone to getting knocked out from a Max Lightning if we don't see any sort of double protect coming out or such, or any sort of protection, I say. And I think Richard just needs to make sure that that Ferrothorn is safe and sound. He wants to try to get rid of this Incineroar, I think, because as well as the Zacian could pose a threat with Sacred Sword if it is carrying it, to be fair.
Yeah, exactly. And Zacian coming in maybe to take a little bit of damage this turn, but as you rightly say, not too much damage at all. Something that might be doing a little bit more damage is those iron barbs from the Ferrothorn coming out from that fake out and doing a little bit of damage to that Incineroar. That chip damage might end up adding up, and Ferrothorn just heals off all of that damage with the leftovers as Regieleki goes back into its base form. Isn't able to use any more max moves, but I think, you know, it's nice to see that Richard got a little bit more utility out of his max Pokemon this time round.
Yeah, I think so. And in this scenario, I have wanted to see Richard prioritize a bit more on the Incineroar. I think that really has been the bane to his strategy. Being able to constantly get the recycling of Intimidates as well as parting shot potentials and fake outs has been quite detrimental to his game plan going into this. So he needs to be able to ensure that he's got an answer to that in order to be able to bring the Zacian in safe and sound to a situation where it can A, pick up a KO onto Kyogre, or B, be faster than Alex's Zacian, which so far it has been doing quite well and successful.
Oh, is that double protect there coming out from the Ferrothorn? I think it is.
Think it might be, but I mean, we're just going to be seeing the Wild Charge go into the Incineroar, so the focus there as it is trying to take it out as much as possible. But we're going to be seeing the Behemoth Blade focus from the Zacian going into the Regieleki. It does, of course, pick up the KO and forces Richard into bringing in his final fourth Pokemon.
And I believe that should be the Zacian there. A parting shot coming out from Alex's Incineroar, being absolutely blocked by the Protect on the Ferrothorn. And now that Reflect has worn off, that's going to be really big because, you know, it's going to be meaning that Richard's damage output is going to be increasing from this turn onwards. Of course, now Zacian coming in for Richard, and there's an Incineroar on the field is some position that you always want to be in when you're playing a Zacian. And now the question is, you know, with that Kyogre in the back, it's definitely not going to want to take any attack from the Zacian. The Incineroar on Alex's side of the field looks like it's in KO range from a Behemoth Blade rather than a Play Rough, which has the opportunity to miss, or a Sacred Sword, which, you know, probably would do similar amounts of damage anyway. So really, Richard in the driving seat in this game too, I think.
Yeah, I think so, because he's positioned himself to the point where Ferrothorn just sits there and inflicts damage, or, you know, at the cost of inflicting damage, actually regains HP. So he can play around a bit with the Protects there as much as possible. He just wants to make sure that he can get rid of the main threats. He's not that scared of the Kyogre. I think he needs to either focus down, like you said, Ben, onto that Incineroar slot, which is actually now a Kyogre, or try to get rid of the opposing Zacian.
And I think, you know, as this Behemoth Blade does target down the Zacian, well targeted there for Alex. You know, a Leech Seed would be absolutely fine. I think, you know, with the Iron Barbs and a bit of Leech Seed and some Protect, a Power Whip, though, coming out from Richard is going to be enough to knock out that Kyogre on Alex's side of the field. Critical hit, but whether or not that makes any difference or not. Only one Intimidate, I believe, onto the Ferrothorn at this stage of the game. And now it's going to be Incineroar versus Ferrothorn and the Zacian. Importantly, though, we are in rain.
We are in rain, but I think, honestly, Richard completely capitalized off of that turn. I can't think of a better outcome that it could have come out from there, because he was able to just focus down and say, okay, I know that you may be forced to go for a switch in here. As long as I can pick up a KO on one of your mons, on your Zacian in this case, I don't mind taking any sort of damage from the Incineroar. We just see as a result, both players have agreed to it. We see the forfeit from Alex Gómez, and my lord, what a way to win that set from Richard.
Yeah.
Absolutely phenomenal play.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see how happy Richard is to have won that match.
Yeah.
Alex is a phenomenal player, as is Richard. You know, there's no shame in taking a loss to players, especially at this stage in the tournament.
Yeah.
As we said before, we're finding the players with the most form going into today's event. So, yeah, really important. Sometimes it's not your day, sometimes it is, and we're really focusing on the players that are having a great run. Well played by Richard. Great fight put up by Alex, but a really overall